My parents skipped my wedding because they never got the invitations. My sister threw them away because she said she didn't want me to steal her spotlight. I left her standing in the snow. Hey, Reddit. My family treated me like the backup kid while my sister got the spotlight. I finally stopped chasing their approval and built a life that actually felt like mine, but they didn't take that well. Before I tell you how it all went down, let's start from the beginning. My name is Natalie Grant. I'm 32 years old, and I'm a project manager for a small environmental tech company in Seattle. My boyfriend turned husband, Eli, and I have been together for 5 years, married quietly since June. We still call each other boyfriend and girlfriend out of habit, but a judge and a couple of witnesses say otherwise. He's the calm to my storm, steady, logical, the one person in my life who doesn't treat everything like a competition. My parents, Margaret and Harold, live 3 hours south in a neighborhood that looks like it's frozen in time. Same manicured lawns, same wreaths on the doors every December, same people peeking through the blinds. My sister, Brianna, everyone calls her Bri, lives nearby with her husband, Dylan. They're the golden couple. Bri could spill a drink on the Pope, and Mom would still say she handled it gracefully. Eli told me to go alone this Christmas. Say what you need to say, he'd said the night before, his hand warm over mine. You don't need an audience for that. Not even me. He was right. I'd avoided my parents since Bri's wedding. I didn't go, and pretending forever wasn't going to cut it. Somewhere along the line, avoiding them had turned into letting them keep the narrative. So I packed a small bag, hit the highway, and tried not to think about the kind of evening I was driving into. By the time I pulled up, it was already dark. The house looked like it was competing in a neighborhood light contest. Red and gold everywhere. Garlands wrapped around the porch columns, blinking icicle lights, and a plastic reindeer army on the lawn. Inside, through the window, everything glowed warm and golden. It looked like a holiday commercial. It felt like walking into a rerun I already knew the ending of. When I opened the car door, the air hit me, sharp, cold, and clean. I stood there for a second, watching my breath cloud in front of me, wondering why I felt more at peace out in the frozen driveway than I ever did inside that house. Then I walked up the steps and rang the bell. Mom opened the door. Perfume first, smile second. Natalie, you made it! She said it like she wasn't sure I would, or maybe like she hoped I wouldn't. Long drive, I said, stepping in. The house smelled like potpourri and overcooked turkey. Everything looked the same. Every surface covered in tinsel. Every photo frame showing Bri's wedding from a dozen different angles. Not one of Eli and me. Mom took my coat, eyes running over me, like she was inspecting a shipment. You look tired, she said, already half turning away. Still working with computers? Environmental systems, I corrected. Yeah. Dad's voice came from the living room, dry as ever. You ever get outside anymore, Nat? Or is the sunlight bad for your software? I didn't respond. Same old script. Same old joke that wasn't a joke. I followed Mom into the living room. The tree was loaded down with ornaments Bri had picked out herself. The TV was muted, but some holiday movie played in the background. 2 actors kissing in front of fake snow. Dad was in his recliner, hands folded on his stomach, wearing that permanent half-frown that doubles as his welcome. Hi, Dad, I said. He nodded. You hit traffic? I shook my head. No, just took my time. He grunted like that was somehow the wrong answer. Bri and Dylan showed up 20 minutes late, loud enough for the whole street to hear. She wore a glittery red dress that probably had its own influencer hashtag. He had on a suit like he'd just left court. Mom nearly squealed when they walked in. There's my beautiful girl, she said, rushing forward. Look at that ring. It just shines. Mom actually lifted Bri's hand so the light could catch it better, like we were at a jewelry counter and Bri was the display model. Dylan kissed Mom's cheek, dropped his coat on the chair, and nodded in my direction. Natalie, he said, like he was acknowledging a coworker he vaguely recognized. Hey, I replied. We moved to the dining room. The table was set like a magazine spread. Gold placemats, crystal glasses, napkins folded into shapes no one actually enjoys unfolding. Place cards with perfect calligraphy. Bri's handwriting, of course. Dinner started with Mom listing every detail of Bri's wedding for the 10th time. The flowers, the venue, the mayor showing up. Dad laughed at all the right spots. Dylan sprinkled in stories about his high-profile cases. He made it sound like he personally held the justice system together with his bare hands. I cut my turkey and focused on not saying anything. So, Bri, Mom said, passing the gravy, how's married life treating you? Bri smiled like she was in a commercial. Perfect. Honestly, we're looking at houses. Dylan just made non-equity partner, and his mom says I should start thinking about kids soon. That's wonderful, Mom beamed. You'll make such a good mother. You've always been so responsible. Then she turned to me, as if she'd just remembered I existed. You could learn from your sister Natalie. Sure, I said flat. Bree leaned forward, pretending innocence with the same face she used in high school when she, accidentally, wore my clothes without asking. So, little sister, she said lightly, when's your big day? Or are you two still figuring it out? I set my fork down. The metal clicked a little too loud against the plate. Already had it, I said. The room went still. Forks froze midair. Mom's smile stalled halfway. Dad's brows drew together. Bree blinked, confused. Wait, what? Eli and I got married in June, I said. My tone didn't change. Courthouse. Simple. We sent invitations. Mom's face dropped. Dad looked like someone had insulted the flag. Dylan smirked, like he knew something everyone else didn't. Mom spoke first. That's not funny, she snapped. Wasn't a joke, I said. I took another bite, swallowed, and looked up. You all got invitations, no one said a word. Bree's mouth opened, then closed. Dylan's gaze sharpened. Dad shifted in his chair. The clock on the wall suddenly ticked louder than it should have. Mom found her voice first, sharp but shaky. We never got anything, Natalie. You must have sent them wrong. Dad leaned back, acting calm, like he was handling a customer complaint. You know how unreliable the post office can be, he said. Things get lost. Happens all the time. Bree found her voice next. Yeah, maybe it got lost or something, she said, eyes wide. You can't just accuse people like that. I stared at her. For once, I didn't shrink. I didn't second-guess myself. Something in me had already snapped into place. You really want to go there? I asked quietly. Dylan, of course, jumped in. Let's not turn this into a witch hunt, he said, smoothing his tie. There's probably a simple explanation. There is, I said, reaching into my jacket. I'd almost left my phone in the car. Almost. But some part of me knew exactly how this night would go. Let's walk through it. I unlocked my phone, opened the folder labeled Receipts, and set it down in the middle of the table. The light from the screen bounced off the gold placemats Mom bought, specially for Bree's wedding rehearsal dinner. Here, I said, tapping the screen. Certified mail tracking for 4 envelopes. I addressed all 4 to this house. You told us years ago to send family mail here. I swiped to the tracking screen. Delivered April 23rd, I said. Signed for at this address. Mom frowned. That could be anyone. Not really. I zoomed in on the signature. That's Bree's. Everyone leaned closer. Bree went pale. No, that's not. Maybe they mixed it up, she stammered. I don't remember signing anything. You don't remember a package that required a signature? I asked. You live 10 minutes away. You stopped by that day to drop off Mom's birthday present, remember? Her jaw clenched. Maybe, but... Dylan spoke up again, voice full of fake reason. Natalie, I'm a lawyer, he said. This isn't legal proof of anything. It could have been an automated system, a delivery mistake. I cut him off. You're a lawyer, Dylan. You know exactly what this is. He didn't respond. I swiped again. Email confirmations from the stationery company. Custom invitations ordered in February, delivered in April. Here's the payment receipt. I flipped to the next screenshot. And here's the email I sent on April 25th to the family account. We still share the login. I saw it open from this IP address and sitting in the trash that night. Mom's face stiffened. Why are you keeping all of this? She demanded. You make it sound like we're criminals. Because I already knew how this would go, I said. Dad sighed like he was bored of the topic. We were planning Bry's wedding, Natalie. You know how much work that was. You could have picked up the phone. I did, I said flatly. May 3rd, May 10th, May 17th. I called, I texted, I emailed, got nothing back. He shrugged. If you'd really wanted us there, you'd have come down in person. I stared at him. It's a 3-hour drive each way, Dad. I made that trip 17 times in 2 years. None of you ever came once. Silence stretched across the table. Mom shifted in her chair, pretending to fix a napkin that didn't need fixing. The only sound was the ticking clock and the faint noise from the muted TV. Finally, Bree muttered, You're being dramatic. It's not that deep. I leaned forward slightly. You threw away my wedding invitations, Bree, I said. I got married without my family because of you. Tell me again how that's not that deep. She blinked rapidly, her hands twisting in her lap. You can't prove I did that, she whispered. I don't need to prove anything, I said. I've got your handwriting, your timing, and your silence. Mom tried to jump in again. You're ruining Christmas with all this negativity, she said. This is supposed to be a family night. I let out a small laugh. It sounded strange even to me. You mean it's supposed to be another night where I sit here and nod while you pretend everything's perfect? Dad's tone turned cold. Watch yourself, young lady. No, I said, steady. You don't get to say that to me anymore. Bree looked between us, panicked. Can we just stop, please? This is ridiculous. Ridiculous is pretending you didn't do it, I said. Dylan stood now, too. Enough, he said. This isn't going anywhere productive. You got married. They didn't show. You're angry. Fine. But dragging it out won't fix anything. I turned to him. You think this is about anger? I asked. It's about respect. You married into this circus, Dylan. You probably think this is normal. It's not. He didn't respond. He just looked at Bri, waiting for her to say something that might save face. She stayed quiet. Mom spoke again, sharper now. You don't talk about this family that way, she snapped. We've done everything for you. Everything? I repeated. You didn't even show up for the biggest day of my life. Dad slammed his hand on the table. The plates rattled. We didn't know, he shouted. I met his eyes. You did. The air felt heavy. No one breathed for a second. Mom's voice softened suddenly, that guilt-laced tone she used when she wanted control back. We're sorry if you feel left out, Natalie, she said. But you're not the only one with responsibilities. You know how busy we were. You weren't too busy for family, I said, my voice low. But even you were too busy for me. That was it. I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything. I didn't give them a scene they could point to later. I pushed my chair back slowly. The legs scraped against the hardwood. Mom flinched at the sound. Where are you going? She asked, voice brittle. Home, I said, where people actually show up when it matters. I grabbed my coat from the rack by the door. Behind me, Bree mumbled something, maybe my name, maybe an excuse, but I didn't look back. I could hear Dylan whispering to her as I reached the entryway, something like, let her go. Dad called out, don't you dare walk out on this family. I paused at the doorway just long enough to say without turning around, you walked out first. Then I stepped into the cold. The house behind me buzzed with muffled voices, but I didn't listen. The only sound that mattered was the quiet crunch of my boots on the frozen driveway as I headed for my car. The cold hit me the second I stepped outside. My breath came out white in the air, sharp enough to sting my throat. The driveway was covered in a thin sheet of ice that cracked under my boots. I walked toward my car, keys already in my hand, wanting to get as far from that house as possible. A voice called from across the yard. Natalie, is that you? I turned. Mrs. Thompson, the neighbor, stood by her mailbox in a heavy coat and knitted hat, the same one she'd probably worn every winter since I was a kid. She waved like this was any other Christmas Eve. And for a second, with my parents' house glowing behind me and the icy air burning my lungs, I realized everything was about to change. Mrs. Thompson stood there, half buried in her old winter coat, a stack of mail in one gloved hand. It is you, she said, smiling. Oh, Natalie, dear, it's so good to see you home. Been too long. I forced a small smile. Evening, Mrs. Thompson. She shifted the mail in her hands, her breath fogging the air. Your mother was just telling me about Bree's wedding. Oh, what a lovely affair that must have been. The pictures were just stunning. I gave her the same polite smile I'd learned to wear for most conversations in this neighborhood. Yeah, I said, look nice. She laughed lightly, oblivious. Your parents must be proud of her. Such a beautiful bride. You must be proud too, being her sister. I kept my tone even. Yeah, proud? She didn't notice the flatness. People rarely did when they were busy admiring the picture in their heads. That family of yours always does things right, she said with a little chuckle. Such a picture-perfect bunch. Behind me, the front door opened again. The noise from inside, voices, the clatter of dishes, spilled out for a moment, then cut off when the door closed. I didn't have to turn around to know who it was. The air changed, just slightly, years of instinct. Bri. Natalie, wait! Mrs. Thompson's eyes lit up. Oh, Bri, she said, delighted. I was just telling your sister how proud your parents must be of you. Bree hugged her arms around herself, her face red from crying, but her makeup still mostly intact. She managed a tight smile. That's very kind, Mrs. Thompson. Merry Christmas. Mrs. Thompson glanced between us, finally sensing some of the tension hanging in the air like fog. Well, I'll let you two talk, she said softly. She hurried back toward her house, boots crunching against the frozen walkway. Her porch light flickered on behind her, casting a weak glow across the street. I stayed where I was, hands in my pockets, the cold seeping through my jeans. The yard lights glowed against the frost, casting long shadows between Bri and me. You didn't have to make a scene in there, Bree said quietly. I didn't answer. She sighed, her breath trembling in the cold. I came out to talk, not fight. I waited. She stepped closer, wiping at her cheeks, the porch light catching on the smudged mascara under her eyes. Look, she said. I know you're angry. You have every right to be. I should have handled things differently. Handled what differently? I asked. She hesitated. The wind pushed a strand of hair across her face. She tucked it back with shaking fingers. The invitations, she whispered. Her voice cracked. For a second, I thought she might back out, retreat to some half-truth that would keep her as the wounded innocent. But she didn't. I took them, she said finally. I shoved them in a box in my garage. I told myself I'd toss them after my wedding, but I never did. The words didn't surprise me. Not really. It was like hearing the answer to a question I'd already solved. I didn't want your wedding before mine, she continued, staring at the icy ground. Everyone was talking about how happy you seemed with Eli, and I wanted that moment too. I wanted it to be about me for once. I looked at her, my voice calm. So you made sure I didn't have one? She shook her head quickly. It wasn't supposed to be like that. I thought maybe I'd just hold on to them for a bit. I was going to tell Mom and Dad after my wedding was done, but then things got busy, and... She swallowed. I decided to pretend it never happened. You didn't pretend, I said. You made sure everyone else did. Her mouth opened, then closed. She nodded faintly. Yeah. I let out a slow breath, watching it fog in the air between us. The porch light flickered above her, buzzing faintly. You didn't steal my spotlight, Bri, I said. You just confirmed what I already knew. She frowned. What's that supposed to mean? That this family doesn't have room for anyone but you. She looked away, staring at the ground like it might give her a script. That's not true, she said weakly. It's exactly true, I replied. You've been the center of everything since we were kids. You wanted to make sure it stayed that way. You got what you wanted. Her voice dropped. You think I don't feel awful about it? I shrugged. I don't care how you feel about it, I said. It's done. She took a shaky step toward me. Natalie, please, I'm sorry. I really am. I don't even know why I did it anymore. I guess I just wanted to win. You didn't want to win, I said flatly. You wanted me to lose. Her lips trembled. I wasn't trying to hurt you. Then why did you? I asked. She didn't answer. She just stood there in the freezing air, crying quietly. The sound of wind in the trees filled the silence between us. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked once and then stopped. After a while, she whispered, Can you forgive me? I looked at her, really looked. The expensive coat, the perfect hair, the same entitled confidence she'd always worn like armor. Even now, even here, she was half posing, trying to control how she looked while falling apart. Not tonight, I said finally. She nodded once, defeated, eyes shining in the cold light. I turned and walked toward my car, the ice cracking gently under my boots. When I opened the door, she called after me. Are you going to tell them? She asked. I didn't look back. They already know, I said. They just won't admit it. The engine started with a low growl. She stood there on the porch, small against the bright house behind her. For a second, it looked like she might run after me, but she didn't. As I reversed slowly down the driveway, tires crunching through thin ice, I caught one last glimpse of her in the rearview mirror, arms wrapped around herself, porch light haloing her like some tragic lead in a play she'd written for herself. Then I turned the corner and she was gone. The rest of the drive was quiet. No music, no podcast, just the hum of the engine and the steady rhythm of my own breathing. The anger had burned off somewhere between their street and the main road, replaced by something colder and heavier. I didn't know what to call it yet. All I knew was that I was done. By the time I reached the main road, the house was far behind me. Snow started falling again, small flakes catching in the headlights like static. For the first time in years, I didn't feel guilty for leaving. I just felt free. It was close to 1 a.m. when I pulled into the driveway of our narrow Seattle townhouse. The porch light was on, snow collecting on the railing. We rent the place. Small front porch, second-floor balcony over the driveway, mismatched neighbors, and a view of someone else's laundry line out back. Inside the living room, a single lamp was on. Through the window, I could see Eli sitting cross-legged on the couch with a mug between his hands. Steam curled from it. When I walked in, the warmth hit me all at once. The quiet hum of the heater, the soft light, the faint scent of whatever tea he'd made. He looked up. You okay? He asked. Yeah, I said, closing the door behind me. Snow shook loose from my coat. It's done. He didn't ask right away. He just stood, walked to the kitchen, and came back with another mug. He handed it to me, the ceramic warm against my frozen fingers. I sat across from him. Tell me, he said softly. So I did. Short sentences. Nothing fancy. Dinner. They talked about Bree. I told them I was already married. They denied it. I showed them proof. Bree signed for the mail. She admitted it later. Said she didn't want my wedding before hers. Eli's expression didn't change much, but I saw the line of his jaw tighten. She actually said that? He asked. Yeah, I replied, word for word. He exhaled through his nose. That's low, he said, even for her. I nodded. Mom tried to spin it. Dad blamed me. Same story. My phone buzzed on the table between us. Once. Then again. Then again. Eli glanced at it. Them? He asked. Yeah. The screen lit up with message after message. I didn't touch it. I just watched the previews flash by. Mom, you embarrassed us tonight. Dad, can't believe you'd walk out on your family like that. Mom, we raised you better than this. Dad, you made your sister cry. Hope that makes you proud. I read the notifications silently, scrolled once with the back of my knuckle, then set the phone face down. They'll keep going for a while, I said. Eli took a sip of tea. You're not answering? He asked. No point, I said. They're not talking to fix anything. They're talking to feel right. He nodded slowly. They're trying to make their shame your problem, he said. Not falling for it anymore, I replied. We sat there in silence for a while. The only sound was the wind tapping against the window and the distant hiss of passing tires on wet pavement outside. The townhouse was warm. Not just temperature warm. Quiet warm. The kind of quiet you notice after a storm. Eli finally said, You didn't lose your temper, did you? No, I said. A small smile tugged at his mouth. Good, he said. That's what they wanted. I know. I leaned back against the couch, the tension still in my shoulders, but lighter now, like someone had lifted a weight I'd gotten used to carrying. They tried every trick, I said. Denial, guilt, acting like it was no big deal. That's how they keep control, he said. Yeah, I answered. Not this time. The phone buzzed again, vibrating against the wood. I didn't move. Eli picked it up, glanced at the screen, and turned it over again. They'll wear themselves out eventually, he said. Probably. He studied me for a second. Do you feel better? He asked. I thought about it. Not better, I said. Just finished. He nodded. That's enough for tonight, he said. He stood, walked over to the balcony door, and pulled it open. Cold air slid inside like a reminder of where I'd just come from. Come on, he said, crooked smile, soft in the lamplight. You look like you need fresh air more than tea. I followed him out. The city was quiet. Snow drifted down, collecting on the railing in a thin white line. Streetlights painted everything in a soft, dull glow. Eli wrapped a big blanket around both of us, pulling me close. How bad was it? He asked after a minute. Bad enough, I said. Mom looked like I'd ruined her holiday card. Dad didn't even deny it at first. Just said I should have tried harder, Bree cried. Dylan kept trying to sound logical. And you? He asked. I told them the truth, I said. Then I left. He smiled slightly. You finally walked away before they could twist it back on you. Yeah, I said. Felt strange, but good. He leaned his head against mine. The blanket rustled in the wind. Somewhere below, a car door shut, echoing up the narrow street. They'll probably tell everyone you stormed out, he said. I know, I replied. Let them. He looked up at me. You're not going to chase them this time? No, I said. I said everything I needed to say. Then leave it there, he said softly. I nodded. For a while, neither of us spoke. The street below was empty except for a plow moving slow through the snow. The cold bit at my face, but it felt clean, like it was washing the last of the night off me. Eli shifted closer under the blanket. You know, he murmured, I'm proud of you. I just told the truth, I said. Yeah, he replied, but you didn't let them drag you down to their level. I let out a small tired laugh. Took me 30 years to figure that out. He smiled. Better late than never. Inside, my phone buzzed again, muffled by the walls. He didn't move, neither did I. You going to block them? He asked eventually. Not yet, I said. They'll stop eventually, or they won't. Either way, I'm done explaining myself. He nodded, satisfied. Good, he said. The snow kept falling, soft against the quiet city. I watched it pile on the railing until it covered the wood completely. For the first time in a long time, the cold didn't feel like punishment. It felt like a reset. Morning light bounced off the snow outside, soft and clean, like the world had decided to start over without asking permission. Eli was already in the kitchen when I walked in, hair pulled back, sleeves rolled up, coffee brewing behind him. He looked up, studying me quietly the way he always did when he wanted to check if I was really okay. Ready for round 2? He asked. Yeah, I said. Let's go. We packed the gifts and the dish he'd made for his mom, a cinnamon bread pudding that made the whole house smell like holidays that actually felt warm. The drive to his parents' place took about an hour. Quiet roads lined with frost, trees bending under the weight of last night's snowfall. Inside the car, something felt easy, loose, like the emotional gravity that had been pulling me down for years had finally snapped. When we pulled up, his dad, Tom, was outside shoveling the driveway. He straightened when he saw us and waved the shovel above his head. "There's my favorite son-in-law," he shouted. I laughed. "I'm your only one," I said as we got out. "That's why you're the favorite," he grinned. Eli groaned beside me. "Dad, stop adopting people." Tom ignored him entirely and slapped my shoulder with a friendliness I could actually feel and believe. Inside, the warmth hit immediately. Eli's mom, Diane, came bustling in from the kitchen with an apron covered in flour. She hugged us both like we'd been away for years instead of one night. She shoved a mug of hot chocolate into my hands before I'd even taken off my coat. "You're too thin," she declared. "We'll fix that today." "I've been warned," I told her. "Warned?" she gasped. "I cook. That's not a warning. That's a blessing." Her energy was loud but comforting, the kind of loud that didn't demand perfection from anyone. The house smelled like cinnamon and roast chicken. Kids were running through the hallway, chasing each other with candy canes, their laughter echoing off the walls. Tom hung my coat on a hook already sagging under the weight of other jackets. "So," he said, plopping into his recliner, "how's the water project going?" "Good," I said. "We're testing a system that cuts down waste in high-demand months." He nodded, eyes brightening. "That's real work," he said. "You should be proud of that." It was such a simple sentence. Ordinary. But it landed like someone had opened a window in a room I didn't realize was full of stale air. Eli came into the living room, smiling at the sight of us talking like we'd been doing it forever. "Dad, Mom wants you," he said. "I know," Tom replied dramatically. "She's been trying to boss me around since 1989. "Then go," Eli said, pushing him gently toward the kitchen. Diane shouted from inside, "Tom, carve this chicken before it dries out." He grinned back at us. "Yes, ma'am." Lunch was loud but easy. Everyone talked over each other, not to compete, just to share. Diane piled food onto my plate with a force that bordered on aggressive affection. "You didn't get enough potatoes," she said. "I've had 2 helpings," I told her. "Then you're just warming up." Eli snorted. "She won't stop until you physically push the plate away." "I can take it," I said. "I believe in you," he deadpanned. I didn't mind. It felt genuine. It felt like people caring without strings. Halfway through dessert, Tom started his classic story about Eli as a kid. "He once tried fixing a leak with duct tape," Tom said, laughing. "Flooded the whole bathroom." "Dad, no," Eli groaned. "You've told that story 100 times, Diane chimed in. "Still funny," Tom said. Everyone laughed except Eli, who just covered his face while I nudged him under the table. It was the kind of teasing that didn't cut, didn't diminish, just warmth bouncing between people. At one point, Eli sat beside me, and while everyone else debated whether Elf or Home Alone was the better Christmas movie, he quietly handed me his phone. "You should see this," he murmured. On the screen was Bry's latest post, a polished Christmas photo of her, Dylan, and my parents. Matching sweaters, perfect smiles. Caption, family, #blessed, #grateful. It looked like something from a holiday card catalog. Too smooth, too curated, too deliberate. Not a trace of what actually happened the night before. I stared for a few seconds. Then I handed the phone back. "Figures," I said. Eli slipped the phone into his pocket. "Let them have their picture," he said. "We've got the real thing." I nodded. Yeah, we did. After lunch, we helped Diane clean up. Eli washed while I dried. Tom tried sneaking a cookie from the cooling rack, and Diane smacked his hand with a wooden spoon. "Out," she commanded. He retreated, laughing all the way back to the living room. When the kitchen was spotless again, Diane poured coffee for everyone. She sat across from us, smoothing her apron over her lap, looking at me with a warm seriousness. "You know," she said, glancing at Eli, "he mentioned you two had a quiet wedding." Eli gave me a little side eye like, "Sorry, couldn't keep that part to myself." Diane continued, "We were thinking it might be nice to have a little reception in the spring, just family and close friends." Eli looked at me, waiting for my reaction. He didn't push, didn't rush. "That sounds perfect," I said. Tom nodded. "We can do it in the backyard," he said. "May is a good month for it." Diane clapped her hands once, delighted. "It's settled!" When we left later, Diane handed me containers wrapped in foil. "Leftovers," she said. "Don't argue." "I wouldn't dare," I told her. Outside, the air was crisp and soft. The house behind us glowed warm through the windows. Eli tugged his beanie down over his ears. "You okay?" he asked as we walked to the car. "Yeah," I said, just noticing the difference. "Good different?" he asked. "The best kind," I said. "No games, no guilt." He smiled. "You deserve that." We got in the car and started driving home. For a while, neither of us spoke. The road was empty, the sky pale blue, fading to gray. Halfway home, Eli rested his hand on mine. "You handled everything right," he said. I exhaled slowly. "I just stopped chasing people who never show up," I told him. He nodded. "That's all you had to do." Snow sparkled under the headlights. The world felt quiet in a way I hadn't experienced in years. Christmas finally felt like family. It was mid-January when the email came. Subject, "Please read this." Sender, Bry Collins. My stomach dropped. I almost deleted it. Almost. But curiosity is a persistent thing. And heartbreak has a long memory. The subject line just sat there on my screen like it was waiting for me to exhale. "Please read this." Sent from Bry Collins. I stared at it long enough for my coffee to go cold. I wasn't afraid of what she would say. I'd already survived the worst version of her. But I felt the familiar tug of old patterns, that pull to explain myself, to soften, to make everything easier for everyone but me. I closed my laptop, opened it again, and clicked. The email was long. Paragraphs stacked like she had poured her entire December into each sentence. She'd titled it, "My Accountability Letter." That alone nearly made me laugh. It sounded like something her therapist forced her to name. But I read, "Nat, I know you don't owe me anything. Not a response, not forgiveness, not even the time it takes to read this. But I'm writing it because my therapist told me avoiding responsibility is the reason I blow up everything I touch. And she said the only way forward is honesty, even if it hurts." I blinked. Bree. Therapy. That was new. She wrote about envy. The kind that didn't look like rage, but like pretending the world owed her brightness at everyone else's expense. She said, "Mom and Dad always treated you like you were fine on your own. I had to perform for their attention. Appear perfect. Stay perfect. Smile through everything. And when I saw your invitation, I panicked. Your happiness felt like a threat." She admitted everything. Taking the invitations, signing for the envelope, hiding them in her garage. She wrote, "I told myself I'd put them back after my wedding. But then I liked the attention. I liked being the center of the house. I'm not proud of that. I haven't been proud of myself in a long time." My chest tightened as I read it, but not in the way she probably expected. It wasn't grief or even anger. It was recognition, a familiar ache that had been there my entire childhood. Then came the part that can only come from someone who's never apologized properly in their life. "I don't expect forgiveness, but I hope someday we can talk." And at the very end, "Love, Bry." I sat with it for a long time, maybe 10 minutes, maybe an hour. Time felt stretched thin. Then I did something that surprised even me. I forwarded it to my father. No explanation, no commentary. Just let him read his golden child's confession in her own polished, neatly organized paragraphs. 5 minutes later, he replied, "She's trying. That counts." I stared at those 4 words until they blurred. Trying didn't count when I tried, when I bent myself in half for them, when I swallowed every hurt like a duty. Trying suddenly counted now that Bree was uncomfortable. I didn't respond. Instead, I deleted both emails, from Bree and from him, not out of anger, out of clarity. Some things didn't deserve space in my inbox anymore. 2 days later, a small cardboard box appeared in our mailbox. No return label, just my name, written in my father's neat block letters. Inside was a single cream-colored envelope, the corner slightly bent. One of my original wedding invitations, still sealed, still addressed to my parents. And on top, a note written on a scrap of lined paper. "Found this in Bree's garage. Thought you'd want it back. Dad." His handwriting slanted downward, tired. I held the envelope for a moment, ran my thumb along the faint gold embossing of my name and Eli's. The paper still smelled a little like the stationery shop we'd spent an hour in choosing the perfect design. I thought about tearing it in half, or throwing it away, or lighting it on fire in some kind of poetic purge. But I didn't. I walked to my desk, slid the envelope into the drawer, and closed it with a quiet click. Not as evidence, as a boundary marker, a reminder that I could acknowledge the past without living in it. Saturday night came, and 6 of our friends crowded into the townhouse for dinner. The space filled with warm, human noise, laughing, clinking glasses, pots simmering on the stove. The smell of roasted vegetables and garlic bread drifted into the living room. I stirred a pot while Mateo told some ridiculous story about getting stranded in Portland after his car politely died in the middle of the highway. Eli leaned against the counter, smirking. "That's what you get for naming your car Serenity," he said. "She was supposed to keep me serene," Mateo protested dramatically. Everyone burst out laughing. And for the first time, I didn't feel like an outsider in my own life. After dinner, as we cleaned the kitchen together, Eli nudged my arm. "You've been quiet," he said. "Just thinking," I replied. "About?" "Bri emailed," I said, "and Dad sent me one of our old invitations." He didn't look surprised. "What did you do with it?" "Put it away." He nodded, approving without saying the words. "That's where it belongs." We moved to the couch after everyone left. The living room was dim, lit only by the soft glow of the standing lamp. Eli's leg pressed against mine. He handed me the last slice of dessert without speaking. The room felt peaceful in a way I didn't realize homes could feel, like the air itself understood boundaries. "This," Eli said quietly, "is what it's supposed to feel like." I looked around, at the empty plates, at the lingering scent of food and laughter, at the silence that didn't come with judgment, at him, warm, steady, real. "Yeah," I said, "it finally does." Later, when I went upstairs to get ready for bed, I paused by the desk drawer. I didn't open it. Instead, I let my fingers brush over the handle once. Not to relive anything. Just to acknowledge that I had finally stopped letting that house define my worth. 2 weeks passed without contact from my family. Peaceful weeks. Eli and I worked, cooked, laughed, planned our spring reception with Tom and Diane. I started going to yoga again, rediscovering muscles I forgot existed. Eli and I picked out flowers for the reception. He held up a bouquet of white peonies and asked, "These, or do these look like the flowers of someone about to be sacrificed to a harvest deity?" We chose the peonies. Everything felt stable. Good. Normal. Then, in early March, while I was tightening a loose cabinet hinge, my phone rang. "Dad." I froze. The ringing filled the kitchen like an alarm. I almost let it go to voicemail. Almost. But something told me to answer. When I picked up, his voice was smaller than I remembered. "Natalie," he said, "your mother fell." He took a breath. "Broke her hip." My heart dropped, not with panic, but with something quieter, something like resignation. "She had surgery this morning," he continued. "It went fine, but she's pretty shaken up." I pressed the phone to my ear. "Which hospital?" I asked. He gave me the name. Then, voice gentler than I'd heard in years, he added, "I thought you'd want to know." I thanked him, hung up, and stood there in silence while the cabinet door hung open. That evening, I told Eli. We sat at the table, hands wrapped around mugs of tea. "You don't have to go," he said softly. "I know," I said, "but I think I will." "Out of guilt?" "No," I said, "out of decency." He nodded, squeezing my hand once. "Then go," he said, "but keep your boundaries." The next morning, I got in the car and drove 3 hours south, down the same stretch of highway I'd driven 100 times, but this time, the weight in my chest felt lighter. The trees along the road were just beginning to show hints of green. Spring was coming, whether my parents were ready or not. The highway stretched endlessly in front of me. 3 straight hours of gray clouds, faded billboards, and patches of early spring trying to push through winter's last stubborn frost. I kept the radio off. Silence felt cleaner. When I finally pulled into the hospital parking lot, the air was sharp with that sterile cold unique to medical buildings. The kind that makes you feel like you should whisper, even outside. Inside, the halls buzzed with the low hum of fluorescent lights. A nurse pointed me toward a private room at the end of a long corridor. I hesitated in the doorway before stepping in. Mom was awake, propped up on pillows, blanket pulled over her legs. Pale, but alert. Smaller than I remembered. Vulnerability sat strangely on her. It didn't suit the woman who'd spent her whole life arranging the world around her. For a second, she just stared at me. Then, "Natalie," she whispered, "you came?" "Dad called," I said simply. She gestured at the chair beside her bed with trembling fingers. "Sit, please." I did. The room was quiet except for the rhythmic beeping of a nearby machine. The air smelled faintly like disinfectant, and whatever flowers someone left on the windowsill. White carnations. Always white, always clean, always controlled. Mom folded her hands in her lap. "I've been thinking a lot," she began. Her voice was soft but not fragile, more like someone trying not to scare away the truth. "About everything, about how I treated you, and your sister, and all of it." I didn't respond. I let her speak. "I wasn't fair," she continued. "I thought I was protecting Bri, but really I was blind. I made you feel like you didn't matter. Her throat worked around the next words. That's not something a mother should do. Silence expanded between us, full and heavy. I nodded once. I heard you, I said. And that was all. She looked like she wanted me to say more, to reach out, to fix the discomfort. But I wasn't there to make her feel better. A nurse came in to check her vitals. I stepped aside, hands in my pockets. Mom watched me, her eyes following every small movement like she was afraid I might disappear. When the nurse left, Mom said quietly, "You don't have to stay long." "I know." Another pause. Then I stood. "You should rest." Her eyes glassed over, but she nodded. "Thank you for coming, Natalie." I nodded back. "Take care of yourself," I said. Then I left. In the hallway, someone rounded the corner carrying a small tote bag. Bray. Her eyes widened when she saw me. She was wearing a soft beige coat, hair pulled back in a low ponytail. No makeup, no performance. Just a tired woman in a hospital hallway. "Hey," she said softly. "Hey." She gestured toward the door I had just left. "Is she all right?" "She's okay," I said. "Recovery will take time." She nodded, swallowing hard. We stood there for a few seconds. Not as enemies, not as sisters exactly, just two people who'd lived in the same house and learned very different things from it. "I brought her some things," Bree said, lifting the bag slightly. "Lip balm, tissues, a book." I stepped aside to let her pass. She gave me a small nod of acknowledgement as she slipped into Mom's room. It wasn't reconciliation, but it also wasn't war, just quiet. Dad was in the waiting area, flipping through a magazine he clearly wasn't reading. When he saw me, he dropped it into his lap. "She'll be okay," he said. "Doctor says recovery will take a while, but she's tough." "I know," I said. He nodded, awkward, stiff, but sincere. "Thanks for coming down," he said. "You didn't have to." "I know." He looked down at his hands, then back up. "You're a good kid, Nat. Better than I've been." I sat with that for a moment. "I'm not here for that," I said, "but I appreciate it." He nodded again, slower this time. "I don't want to lose touch," he said. "Whatever happened before, I'd like to fix what can be fixed." I took a breath. "I'm not going back to how things were," I said, "but I'm not disappearing either." He seemed to absorb that, exhale it, accept it. He stood, and for the first time in years, he didn't follow it with a lecture or guilt. Just a quiet nod. I left the hospital a few minutes later. The parking lot was half empty, the air cool and still. Clouds drifted low over the buildings, soft and heavy. A flock of birds cut across the sky in a V, heading somewhere warmer. As I reached my car, I felt it. A strange calm. Not relief, not sadness, just clarity. I didn't feel pulled backward anymore. The drive home was peaceful. No rehearsed arguments buzzing in my head, no tightness in my chest. Just the road, long and familiar, and the steady hum of the tires beneath me. Halfway home, I called Eli. He picked up on the second ring. "Hey," he said, "how'd it go?" "She's okay," I said. "Had surgery. We talked for a bit. It was fine." He listened, one of the million quiet reasons I married him. "You sound calm," he said. "I am," I said. "Strange, right? But I am." He smiled through the phone. I could hear it. "You coming home?" "Yeah," I said. "I'm on my way back." "Good," he said. "Home's ready." That word, home, hit deeper now. Not a place I came from. A place I built. A place I chose. And when I finally pulled into our driveway, the lights from our living room glowed through the window. Warm, steady, real. Eli opened the door before I got out of the car. He was wearing one of my oversized sweatshirts and socks with mismatched stripes, completely unaware of how peaceful he looked. He wrapped his arms around me before I even stepped over the threshold. No questions. No analysis. Just presence. "You okay?" he asked against my shoulder. "Yeah," I said. And I meant it. We sat on the couch, his head resting lightly against mine. The house smelled like dinner and coffee, the kind of quiet that felt deserved. I looked around. Framed photos on the wall, the faint hum of the heater, the blanket draped over the arm of the couch. After a moment, I said quietly, "Home finally feels like what it's supposed to." Eli didn't open his eyes. He just smiled, small and soft. Took long enough. I laughed once, tired and real. "Yeah," I said, "but it was worth it." Outside, the wind moved gently through the trees, and inside, everything stayed warm. I didn't need to wonder what came next. For the first time in my life, I already knew. Spring arrived quietly, the way good things often do. Not in grand gestures, but in small ones. Buds along the sidewalk trees, softer morning light through our kitchen blinds, the way Eli hummed when he made coffee because the sun finally rose early again. And planning our belated backyard reception with Tom and Diane gave the season a kind of sweetness I hadn't expected. We didn't want anything extravagant, just the people who mattered. A few friends, Eli's cousins, his parents' neighbors, and the couple of coworkers I actually liked. Tom built a wooden arch in the backyard that he was far too proud of. Diane experimented with 3 different frosting recipes for the cake until she declared, "This one tastes like happiness. We're using it." Every evening after work, Eli and I would sit at the small dining table and scroll through ideas. String lights, simple flowers, playlists that didn't sound like an airport bathroom. Every so often, he'd glance at me over the screen with a look I knew too well. "You okay?" he'd ask. And every time I'd realize I actually was. The week before the reception, I got a message. Not from Bri, not from Dad, but from Mom. A short one. "Your father told me about the reception. I'm glad you're celebrating. I won't come, but I hope it's a beautiful day for you." No guilt, no passive-aggressive jabs, just a strange, quiet acknowledgement. Old me would have read into it, picked it apart for hidden meaning, wondered what I was supposed to do next. But this time, I just read it once, nodded to myself, and archived it. Not everything needs an answer. Some things just end. The day of the reception, Eli's parents' backyard looked like something out of a small-budget indie romance movie. String lights stretched between the trees. The wooden arch Tom built stood tall, draped in white fabric and fresh eucalyptus. Folding chairs sat in neat rows, and the scent of Diane's cooking drifted into the warm spring air. Our closest friends arrived early, carrying wine bottles and giant hugs. Mateo wore suspenders for reasons unknown. Our other friend Grace showed up with a Polaroid camera and declared herself the official memory capturer. Eli straightened the light jacket I wore over a soft, simple dress. "You look perfect," he said. "So do you," I replied. He laughed. I combed my hair. That's the extent of my effort. As people began taking their seats, Tom called out, "All right, everyone, 5 minutes, places." I practiced this speech in the mirror, so don't ruin my big moment. Diane threw a napkin at him. "You practiced the wrong speech," she called back. "Yours is next week for Chase's birthday, not today." "Same difference," he shouted. Laughter filled the yard. And it hit me. This was what family was supposed to sound like. Not careful, not competitive, not conditional. Just people loving each other out loud. When Eli and I stood under the arch, he reached for my hand and squeezed. The kind of squeeze that says, "I'm here, exactly where I want to be." Tom officiated with a mix of sincerity and tangents. At one point, he compared marriage to maintaining a lawnmower. Nobody understood the metaphor, but he was enthusiastic enough to make it charming. Our friends cheered, whistled, and wiped away tears. Grace snapped Polaroids that flitted down like confetti. Eli leaned close and whispered, "You look happy." "I am," I said, "really." And I meant it. Every word, every breath, every moment. Later, when the sun set and the lights flickered on overhead, I stepped inside to grab something from my purse. My phone buzzed on the counter. A single text. From Dad. Just one sentence. "We're glad you're celebrating. Take care of each other." I stared at it for a moment, not with longing, not with pain. Just acknowledgement. There was no invitation, no request, no rewriting of the past, just a sentence floating in the space between us, one that didn't demand anything from me. I set the phone down, turned off the screen, walked back outside. Eli was laughing with our friends. Mateo was arguing with Grace about whether candid photos were better than posed ones, and Diane was forcing Tom to drink water because he talks too much. I slipped into Eli's arms. He held me like he'd been saving the space for me. "You okay?" he murmured. "Yeah," I said. "I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." He kissed my forehead. The music swelled softly behind us, lights twinkling overhead as people we loved moved through the yard in easy, familiar rhythms. I didn't feel the weight of obligations. I didn't feel the pull of old wounds. I didn't feel the need to defend myself or justify anything. Just warmth. Just freedom. Just home. A home I built. A life I chose. A peace I earned. And for the first time in my life, that was enough.